Hi guys, it's Blackie and Bear, and this is Old Wayz number 10, and we've been requested to talk about first aid, natural remedies, stuff like that.
Uncle Blackie, we're this many.
We're this many? Yeah, okay. We're this many. Now we got to pull boots off to go to the next one. Oh, but first aid, now let's clarify a little bit here. Most of the little nicks, oopses, boo-boos, etc., you already know how to take care of. I recommend you get the Boy Scout first aid manual. It's a great thing to have for people that have just no idea whatsoever. Start with that. You're going to need a supply of Band-Aids, peroxide, things like that to utilize from home. This stuff's available. It only makes sense to have it. Use the nature stuff as the primary when you can't get the store-bought. Save the store-bought for the things you cannot get from nature. Okay?
Disclaimer, we are not doctors. We do not play them on YouTube or TV. We're just guys who've got some experience. I was at one time a licensed EMT in the state of Alabama. What used to be the old EMT intermediate. And I could do anything that a paramedic could do except push medication. I could not do that, but I could do everything other than that. So that's our credentials. Mm-hmm. And he's got his first aid merit badge, so he's good there.
I was taught that. I was taught by a Special Forces medic. A lot of first aid techniques and stuff like that. But the biggest thing you need to understand is when to recognize this is beyond my ability. So let's look at the two ends of this. There is we'll call it mechanical problem. I got a cut and I'm bleeding. Broke bone, dislocated finger. That's a mechanical problem. Okay, that means that some action has caused injury to me. And usually a mechanical response is required. I need to stop the bleeding. I need to splint a broken limb, something like that. Then there's non-mechanical, which is physiological, and that's like infections, things like that. Ultimately, and this is the thing you've got to get, medicines don't do anything but provide the body with what it needs to heal. Ultimately, you're going to heal. So all an antibiotic is doing is giving your body the resources it needs. It's throwing gas on the fire. Because this is what the body needs when it's fighting infection. It gives it abundant so that it's got that resource to fight the bad guys, so to speak. Natural remedies are doing the same thing. They're bringing in the enzymes, the complex chemistry that the body needs to fight an infection or whatever. Most of your modern medicine came not from the lab, but came from some native or natural remedy that they got a chemist and guys with a lot of alphabet after their name to go through and find out. What was the guy that Hippocrates, first doctor? He was giving a lecture and they came to him and said that this woman was in childbirth and was suffering. And did he know of any remedy that could be given to her to ease her pain? And he said that the only thing that he knew of that would possibly help it was to give her strips of willow bark to chew upon. Well, somebody in the 1800s got to examining willow's bark and found out that's where we got aspirin from. The active ingredient in the willow bark is aspirin.
Acetylsalic, I think I'm pronouncing it, acetylsalic acid.
Yep, and it helps the body to block pain. And so therefore that's where that comes from. Most of your other native things where it was effective, and you got somebody that was a chemist or somebody that looked at it and then they took whatever the leaves, the whatever was, the decoction, the concoction, and broke it down and found it and made it better. Because once we isolate it and figure out, oh, this is the important part, then we can greatly multiply that in a lab and produce a tablet of just it, as opposed to the rest of the bark. So you don't have to chew a kiddie pool worth of willow bark to get the equivalent of 5 aspirin. We can just give you 5 aspirin.
A lot of these preventatives, if you will, are known in Native American communities. You know, they existed here long before there was ever a pharmacy opened up in any of the Spanish colonies or English colonies or French colonies. They were doctoring on themselves for thousands of years before we showed up. I would encourage, and I know I speak for him, familiarize yourself. There's a lot of material out there and we've talked about it. Familiarize yourself. Don't necessarily jump on what we tell you. Do your own research. If you have friends who are Native American, talk to them, because they know somebody who knows. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm. And it all has some sort of bearing. Okay. Now, let's talk on the physical for just a minute. Cuts. Okay. Here's how I was taught, because we lived in muddy, nasty conditions. You had horse poop, cow poop, dog poop, cat, you know, just poop everywhere, you know. And so we were exposed to that a lot. Our immune system built up because we were in that environment, you know. We're gutting fish, we're doing whatever. You got nicks on your hand as you're trying to clean fish, clean game, and you got sick. And so when we were young, you got sick quite a bit. In fact, that was one of the things. Child mortality was very high in the past, much more so than today, because children didn't have the immune system yet, and they were in such an environment. In fact, in Rome, Romans didn't name you till you turned 7. Oh, you had a nickname. But was it really expected you were going to die?
Statistically, you were.
Statistically, you were. And so mom and them were kind of afraid to kind of get close to you for fear that you weren't going to make it. Of course, you love your offspring, don't get me wrong, but it was assumed that most of them weren't going to make it. And so when you turned 7, it was expected that, hey, you made it, and they'd actually name you because of it, because kids didn't have the immune system. Your immune system is your ultimate line of defense. So look up things that you can take to help boost your immune system. I don't want to be terrible vague with this, but the bottom line is I want you to get the basis of the idea that what we're talking about is you have to have the understanding that any kind of medicine is just helping your immune system. It won't do anything by itself. It needs help from it. A mechanical injury where I broke a finger or I cut, dislocated, or whatever, number one, you should determine, is it really broke? Okay? Indicator that something is broke is a black line will show up in the meat. That's talking about broken blood vessels, and it's bleeding into the meat. So that's a pretty good indicator. Bone sticking through, real big indicator.
Yeah, compound fractures are really good indicators that something's not right.
Something's not right.
An offset to the arm, like if he, let me see the arm. You know, if he's got from here down right here, but from here up is over here, he's got a problem. And that's the kind of stuff that he's talking about.
You need to, when an accident's occurred, the first thing you do is assess. Let's look at the individual or look at yourself. What I have done in my own life is if I took a hard fall or whatever and I hit the ground, bam, don't be in a hurry to get up.
No. And keep your head, okay? Do not have a meltdown. You know, if you are with somebody and they are injured, or if you are injured, do not have a come apart. That will kill you. Keep your mind on what's going on. and it's like he's saying, assess what's going on, and if possible, try to treat what is going on.
Improve it. So, like I said, I hit, you fall, whatever, you hit the ground, bam. Lay there a minute, let the stars stop dancing around and breathe a minute. And then very slowly start moving parts. I'll move a hand, you know, let's say I landed hard on this shoulder. I'll move this hand a little bit, move that leg, and work your way around finding out what works. Because quite often when you have a mechanical injury, it's numb. The body just doesn't react to it, like it turns it off. And you don't know that you've got bones sticking out over here. You feel a numbness.
Also, there's this really neat thing called adrenaline.
Yeah.
And you are going to have an adrenaline dump. That's situations where, you know, mom and child are in a wreck and she picks up the car off of him.
That's what it is, adrenaline.
That's exactly what it is. That's an adrenaline rush.
When you go to pick up a weight, what stops you from picking it up is pain. The body going, wait, this is a little too much.
Bad idea.
And so the body will send pain information to your brain telling you that's too heavy. Under this fight or flight and adrenaline, they don't. And so you have a person, you know, a little bitty old lady that weighs 135 pounds picking a car up off of a child because now she probably broke half the bones in her body doing it. But the body will overload. So you just got to recognize that when somebody's hurt, quite often they will be this situation. So you as the responder to them need to realize that when John has this traumatic fall or whatever, and you get to him and he reaches up and grabs you trying to pull himself up, he can injure you. Not meaning to, but his mind's kind of in a panic of get up. You know, and I've personally seen that. Where someone has injured someone else because of their reaction to being hurt. So
at one point, I was also a Red Cross lifeguard, and one of the things that they train us is when you have a person that's in a swimmer in distress, don't approach them from the front because they're going to climb on top of you and push you down. You always approach them from the back, and that's along these same lines. You know, if you're in the woods and your partner that you're with, whoever you're walking with, breaks a leg, they're going to try to stand up and pull you down in the process. You have to keep your distance initially, just because of the immediate danger involved.
Take a couple of moments because your impulse is to rush over and help them. Again, you got to let the situation calm down a moment. Yes, they hurt. It's better to back off, take a deep breath or two, assess what's wrong with them because they're going to do their reaction. You can't control their reaction.
Right. But you can control yours.
You can control yours. Let them get into what normally they'll, you know, oh my God, this hurts and and they're going to do the flail around a minute until they realize, and then they'll go still. That's when you can approach them. And like he's saying, approach from the back, approach from the side. Tell them, okay, lay still, let me look. Let me see what's going on. If it is a break, like I said, black mark, red mark, or the bone ain't straight or whatever, you want to keep that from flopping around. That's going to do more additional damage. So the classic Boy Scout thing of a stick on top, a stick on bottom, and some sort of binding to hold it. If you don't have that, it's getting the arm put into a position, say a forearm, where you can do this. Sometimes you can't move them around much because the jagged pieces of bone are binding muscles. So yeah, I could just do this. You may not, that muscle may not allow itself to go in that direction.
Yeah, assess those kind of things very carefully.
Go very slowly.
Because if you have a crushing fracture, you have hundreds, potentially hundreds of knife edges in that situation, and every one of them can and will cut. If it's a compound fracture, then that's going to take some special consideration as well.
And the number one thing with that is, let's go ahead and deal with that. If you have a compound fracture and the bone sticking out, you want to cover the end of that bone with something
Wet.
wet.
Something that's wet, like a bandana or something, and secure it in place.
And secure it in place. You do not want it to dry out. Get it secured and then transport them as rapidly as possible to medical need. You are not really in a good position to deal with a broken bone in the wild, okay? Having said, like I've said in my past, where I've had to relocate parts of me and pull things straight before, that was different situations. But the thing about it is the number one thing is to cause no more damage than possible. Transport them to, or if this is something where I cannot transport them, okay, because the way their leg is broke or whatever, then I've got to assess and get help to here. So I need to put them in a position where they're comfortable. Quite often when people have been injured, they throw up. It's a shock-like reaction. They can go into shock. So don't be in such a hurry to take off and get help. Yes, they're in pain, but stay with them a couple of minutes. Now you got the magic hour we're trying to do, but my point is this. The person falls, hurts, breaks a leg, it's obviously a break. You remain calm. Do not do the, oh my God, you know, you're making it worse on them. No matter how bad the injury is, you tell them, this isn't that bad, you're going to be fine, just stay calm, we're going to take care of this, I'm going to get help. Make sure that they are not in a position that if they pass out, like fall backwards on their back, pass out, their tongue can drop down and they can suffocate. They can go into shock. Keep them talking, you know, this is not that bad, etc. And then once you've had a few minutes with them and they appear to be, they're going to be okay. Go get help if you can't call it by the phone or guide help in.
Before you leave, make sure that the person is in a state of calmness. If you have a blanket, keep them warm. That that will will throw a person into shock quicker than most anything.
Shock is one of the #1 killers.
Yeah, if you have the opportunity, if they're not actively splurting arterial blood all over you, maybe a small fire, depending upon the time of the year, because you want to maintain all the body heat that you can.
Because the body kind of goes into shock and just shuts down.
Yeah, and you want to avoid that.
And they, in the middle of summer, they'll go to shivering. Mm-hmm. So some sort of cover, whatever is handy. He brought up arterial. How bad are they bleeding? If it's spurting out like it's pouring out of a Coke can or something, you have arterial, you have to put a tourniquet onto them. In some way above that, constrict it down and get it locked off. You're on a time limit now, guys. You've got to get help to them as rapidly as possible. Now, people are going to tell you, carry a tourniquet with you everywhere. The odds of an arterial hit are kind of low, not zero, I agree. In combat, yeah, guys carried that. In certain activities where you're going to be high-speed impacts, yes, I can see that. I do not carry a tourniquet. I have a leather belt on me that I can cinch it down tight enough. It's a heavy enough leather belt. And by time.
I do actually carry a tourniquet with me almost every day. Should I tell?
No.
Okay.
But the thing about it is with a tourniquet, it's because you've got that kind of arterial blood. They're going to bleed out. You ain't got no time.
Yeah.
See.
T-shirts, button-up shirts, belts, suspenders, they make good tourniquets. You can tie them, you can wrap and tie tight enough that you can improvise a tourniquet, and don't be afraid to do it. You know, minutes count.
Cut the blood flow off to that, yes, it's going to be bad. They'll be dead if you don't. Get help. If it's going to be like we've talked about, you're out in the country and it's 45 minutes where you're going to get an ambulance out here. You know, yeah, that's going to be bad. Yes, it is. But if you're alive, you know, when I traveled as a truck driver, I carried with me maxi pads, duct tape, tampons. And now all the medical field are going to scream, oh, don't even talk about tampons. Listen, my purpose here is to keep you alive until I can get you to better medical treatment. If it's not arterial blood, but it's a long, deep gash, something that I can put a maxi pad across top of and then put duct tape on the outside to pull it as a pressure bandage, I'm going to do that. If it's a sucking chest wound or something, I need plastic or something to put across that opening and then put it. I do not want to put duct tape directly onto the wound because that's going to cause additional damage when they take it off. I don't care out here around it. You know, they've got the unlocking stuff at the ER, but they'll get it off of them there. But my entire purpose here is to keep you alive, to get you to proper medical treatment. Now, all the stuff, we both had broke fingers, we took care of ourselves. You know, break a finger, if it's not a compound or something, pull it, get it straight, and then after you're sure everything flexes, then we tape it to the finger next to it.
Really, that's all an ER is going to do anyway, is tape it off to the finger beside it.
Isolate it.
Yeah.
Dislocated shoulder, get it back in position.
Oh yeah, I've done that 2 or 3 times.
I've done that several times. Dislocated finger, put it back into position. But all of that stuff is, you can't just learn it by listening to us. You've got to do some research.
Yeah, if you have access to a community college and they have an emergency medical program, take the basic course. It's not going to hurt you. I mean, it'll take up a few nights a week and you may have to do a couple of rotations in the ER, but you'll have the knowledge. That's important. And once you have the knowledge, they can't take it away from you.
Yeah. Now, as far as, like I said, the Boy Scout first aid book, great beginning first aid book. Another book that I recommend, the title of the book, I don't have one, I gave my 2 copies away, was Where There Is No Doctor. That is written in common layman terms, and it's for people that's going to be out in the middle of nowhere, and it's techniques and things on how to treat somebody to get them in, you know.
When life goes sideways, I mean, you can hear traffic across the pasture, but it's a long way to that road if you're hurt. Mm-hmm. You know, consider yourself isolated, period. If you're in a semi-urban environment or even a rural environment, consider yourself isolated, and you are the first responder. You are you're for initially to evaluate, you're it. Tag. But like he's saying, that's a good resource book. I'm looking for a copy of it actively right now, and the dental book.
And one is Where There Is No Dentist.
Yeah, I'm actively looking for those right now.
Mechanical injury where you fall down and bust out teeth, or you're trying to bend this limb out of the way and it slips out of your hand, slaps you in the mouth and busts teeth. Things like that you're going to have to be able to do to buy time, you know, till you can get to help. Now, stepping out of the mechanical, back to the physical part of it.
That was timely.
That was good time. And Remy sounding the ambulance alarm. Natural remedies. All natural remedies are going to do is give the body what it needs. Now, something that I want everybody to understand is charcoal. Right out of a fire, charcoal. Crushed up real fine, put into water, make a slurry of it, and get the person to drink it. They're going to puke.
Shortly.
Very quickly. That is something that you need to have in your mental tackle box where someone may have ingested something toxic by accident or whatever. I was on a camp out many years ago, and there was a jug sitting there on the table. And this individual had had a few drinks, and he come up and he grabbed hold of the jug, snatched the lid off, and took it back and chugged a big old swallow. It was kerosene. It was for the lamp oil.
Not good.
And so we're in the middle of nowhere out here, and so I instantly made him a charcoal cocktail, and we got him to puking. Get it out. Again, you need to look at what are things that you could accidentally ingest. Never, here's another thing for your farmstead to understand. Never take a food bucket, a food jug, or whatever, and put something in it that could be poisonous in any way, shape, or form without radically altering that jug so that when you see it, remember the old skull and crossbones? People used to do that. That was to tell you what's in here is poison. Do not mistake it for something else. And so if someone accidentally poisons themselves, there are certain things you should make them throw up and certain things you should not make them throw up. In the situation we were in, we erred on the side of making puke it. Get it out of him now. Fingers down the throat. Make them throw up. Get it out. Chug water, throw up again. Wash that out, because if you absorb this, it's going to be bad. There are acids and stuff like that. Throwing up is a bad thing because that just brings the lining out with it. Again, you're going to have to do some research to understand. But charcoal can be done with that. Now,
Charcoal will also neutralize acid, so that's a plus there.
yes. Getting them to when someone has become got a cut or something and it's starting to get infected, okay? One, the area will usually become red and raised. That indicates the body is fighting it, etc. What can you put on top of it? There are certain things you can grind up and put on top of it, like yarrow-root and stuff like that.
Right.
Honey. Honey is antibacterial. It kills all bacteria and it's inert in the body. So if you've got a cut and you have nothing else, put honey on it. Real honey, not the corn syrup stuff.
Yes, the bee stuff.
Actual bee honey
Yeah.
will act as a antiseptic and neutralize. And I have had something pucker up real bad before and going red, and I picked at it, got the scab off of it, and put honey on it to help the body fight and kill it.
My mother had a sebaceous cyst on her back for years, and one day I was at her house and I said, let me look at that thing for a minute, and she was fussing about it, and I prepped it and applied a couple drops of honey, and it went away because of the antiseptic value of honey. Things like honey should always be part, if not of your medical kit, your kitchen kit.
Just for that reason.
You're gonna have salt and pepper. Put a little small, like a shampoo bottle of honey in there. Something that you can keep with you for just such emergencies.
For sweetening, use it
Yeah.
in sweetening, use it as anti, etc. Pine sap.
Yes.
When I was a boy, you got a cut or something. I remember me and my granddad had caught fish and we were cleaning fish, and a catfish basically gouged me. The barbs on it cut like you took a knife and cut you. It was that catfish. Well, the slime on the catfish, some people react to it, some people don't.
Catfish can also, some species of catfish have a, for lack of a better word, venom in that spine for defensive use, and when you grab a hold of them, they think, uh-oh, and try to stick you.
Yeah, it's not actually venom, but it's like a bacteria.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what my granddaddy did was he just took his pocket knife and went up to a young pine tree and skint the bark off of it. Anytime you've got any kind of piercing wound or something like that is not life-threatening, let it bleed for a minute. Don't be in such a hurry. I know it is disheartening to see the blood, but the blood coming out will clean the wound. And this is something that comes back from our Native American side, was you let the wound clean itself. Let it bleed 4 or 5 minutes. As long as it's not just pouring blood, you know what I mean, let it bleed. And then you apply pressure, try to bring it down after it's cleaned the wound. Well, he then, after that tree went running pine sap, he took the back of his blade and he scooped up the pine sap and put the pine sap into that. Well, it burns, I'll tell you right now. But at the same time, it has antibacterial capabilities and it was neutralizing that infection. And it clots the wound very quickly.
Yeah, the active ingredient is turpentine, unrefined Turpentine.
and it clotted it like that. It quit bleeding almost instantly. And then he took one of the little limbs and just took the outer bark and cut a strip of the inner bark and stuck it over the top of it. It stuck like a Band-Aid. I wore the thing 2 or 3 days, you know. And so it's like nature's Band-Aid is a little strip of pine and pine rosin.
I actually think I remember that from school.
Yeah.
You come to school with that on your
I
finger.
had that on my finger, yeah.
Quite the celebrity for a couple of days.
The teacher, because of the pattern of it, she thought I had a worm or something in my hand, and she was seeing a tail or something. And no, it's a, oh my God, why'd you do that? Because it's a Band-Aid. No, we got to take that off. But no, we're not. It's okay. You know, she finally left it alone, but I told her, I said, Granddaddy put it on there. It's okay. We've done this before. But
Another good clotter, if you're in a real deep situation, is cobweb. Cobweb is a good field alternative for stopping bleeding, not of a major wound, but on a minor wound, until you can get to something better. Stuff it with a cobweb. And
go ahead.
I just was going to say, wrap it up securely and then transport.
Red, and learn your trees a little bit. Red oak bark has tannin in it. Okay, so you can take the bark and make a tea out of it. Now that can be used as a wash. So I've got a rash or something like that that is wanting to be kind of like prickly heat or something like that. I can put that wash on it. Yeah, it's going to stain your skin a little bit, but at the same time, it's what's called a drawing. And what that means in English is it causes blood vessels and stuff like that to contract. Obviously, whatever is here, the body is not able to kind of get a real idea on. Now, you're going to hear this term called homeopathic. Okay? What that means in English is this. Your body is not recognizing whatever this bug is that's giving you the upset tummy. If I get you to drink this, your body will react because it gives you an upset tummy. And so it's kind of like I'm putting a beacon up and saying to the body, do this. And so I will get the bad stuff along with the good stuff at the same time because I'm causing that. So homeopathic remedies quite often cause pain, cause nausea, cause whatever, because they're trying to, you got something the body's not recognizing, they're going to give you similar symptoms to get the body to react to it and hopefully nuke the bad stuff at the same time. Okay? And so many of those things work like that. Like, what is that thing? Dang it, I'm still flipping off my mind.
What are we trying to cure?
Bone set. What I want to call it. It's the stuff you get, it makes you run a fever. I think it is bone set. But it makes you run a low fever and it makes you feel a bit nauseous and stuff like that. And people had a broke bone, because breaking the bone releases things within the body. They would give this plant to, and I've always heard it called bone set. But it would make you have nausea and it would make you run a low fever. The game here was it would cause the immune system to flare up, and any problems from that injury, the body would be coming in gangbusters and take care of it. Okay, bone set. Well, I know it as. I used to know the other name. I'm bringing on blank. But yarrow. If you have yarrow in your area, that was oftentimes emaciated, pounded, cooked, and used as a way as a poultice and stuff like that to treat various components. Tobacco, little old package, regular old pipe tobacco. Pipe tobacco is better than cigarette tobacco. Cigarette tobacco is the cheapest crap they can find, and it's modern, boosted heavily with nicotine, which is not good. The pipe tobacco is not, and you can make a poultice out of that to put on certain things to help draw them.
Bone set. By the way, Peterson's Guide to Medicinal Plants. Bone set, also called thoroughwort. Uses. Let me find time and place. Important medicinal plant among Native American groups throughout the range. Leaves and tops as well as roots universally used as a sweat-inducing treatment for colds, flu, decoction bitter, induces vomiting. The leaves were used to treat breakbone fever or dengue fever. Excuse me. Characterized by severe aching down the bones. This is how the name bone set originated. Common home remedy of colonial and 19th century America, extensively employed by Native Americans and European settlers as a folk remedy and prescribed by physicians.
Yeah. I can remember my grandmother talking about when the flu of 1918 had came through and so many people were getting sick and dying, that her grandmother made just coffee pots of bone set, and everybody in the family had to drink once a day a half a coffee cup of bone set. Everybody's running a fever. Everybody felt like crap because of that.
But they survived.
But they survived. Nobody was getting the flu because it was making the immune system so hostile to the bug.
Both of my grandfathers were age eligible for World War I, and that's the only thing that kept them off the Western Front. Was the flu epidemic.
But like what Barry's talking about, the medicinal plant books, pick an ailment. So let's start with something easy. Upset stomach, brambles, briars,
Just your common briar.
plain old briars. The thing that the little blackberries grow on, that they're not really blackberries, they're dewberries. Brambles, it's called. They have various names all over the United States. 2 or 3 leaves made into a tea, or just chewed, acts like Pepto-Bismol, and it's very good for settling the stomach. I've used it many times on campouts where somebody was cooking something that did not agree with me, and it will not cure diarrhea, at least in my case, but it will lessen it, and it will definitely help with the calming down the stomach for nausea. But again, do your own research. Never try any native plant as the one time I've got to know now. Always test this stuff out, and what I recommend for all native plants. Are you allergic? Every person on this world is deathly allergic to something. Now the big obvious ones are like you're allergic to peanut butter or whatever. But you don't know that you're allergic to bone set. It's not common, okay? For you anyway, you probably never ingested it, never been around it. So when you've got one of these plants, what I recommend you do first is take it and just simply hold it in the palm of your hand for a few minutes.
Can you pause this for just a minute?
Yes. Okay. Now, we talked about the Peterson guide. What else you got there you want to talk about?
This is a good resource. This is Dave Canterbury's Bushcraft 101, and he has back in the back a series of wild and medicinal plants. It's Appendix B, and it will talk you through some of this stuff that we're talking about. It's a good resource. For example, it lists cattail and what it does for you, antiseptic, tooth and gum care, which means you can brush your teeth with it. Mullein is an absolutely fantastic plant, and it can actually alleviate asthma attacks. That's one of those things. We were talking about those books that show up on your YouTube feed every now and then. One of those resources is herbal and medicinal remedies. Again, it's a great resource if you want to invest in it. But there are Dave has put in a lot of time and thought, and it's a good resource along with the Peterson's guide. The Canterbury book does not have pictures that Peterson does, so you might want to combine, let them tag team, find what you want in here and apply it here.
Yeah, that's the thing, that anytime we're going to be doing nature, like I started to say a minute ago, and I got off on a tangent, that's the reason we did a little edit. Hold it, you start with the plant, hold it in your hand, see if you're going to react to it. If that doesn't cause reaction, put it on the inside of your elbow and do like that. See if your body's going to react to it. If you don't get a reaction by that, then take a small piece, put it in your mouth, put it between your cheek and gum, leave it there for a couple minutes, spit it out. Do this at home so you can immediately be able to brush, scrub, whatever. You don't feel any tingling, no redness, no nothing. Try chewing a piece and then spitting it out.
Also, if your gums start to swell or your tongue starts to swell, spit it out. Seek medical attention as quickly as you can.
Yeah, because we can't possibly know if you're allergic to something. And so anytime you're going to be dealing with native plants, always, always, always err on the side of caution. But my recommendation is you want the Peterson plants, you want the medicinal plants. Books like Canterbury's book are very good as a guide. Like I said, it doesn't have pictures. Well, that opens the door for you to do your research. Hey, this sounds pretty good. Like we were just talking a couple minutes ago about dog fennel. And I'd always heard it called wild fennel. He calls it dog fennel. I've always liked the smell of it, and he looked it up and found out its properties. It can be used on insect bites and stuff, and can be used as a lot like bone set. When I was listening to it, like, wow, I didn't know you could use dog fennel for that. But you got to take your time and learn, slow but sure. Now, as far as you've got the huge advantage right now. You got the resources. Unfortunately, there's just no way to watch a single video and impart it, all this information. That's the reason you had communities and groups that had that healer, that shaman, that whatever, that they dedicated their time to learn how to make the chemicals, make the decoctions, make the medicine. And so that's one reason they call it making medicine.
Yeah.
You know, it is such a complicated job that requires a lot of experience. There isn't any just, oh, hit the button and there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if, like we've said before, some motivated individual pops an EMP, this is a glorified paperweight.
Yeah.
Okay. This still functions. That's why we both rely on printed material and not online services. Although we do use online services.
A lot.
We don't rely on online services.
And that's the thing, if you have some sort of medical condition, I am not in any way giving you medical advice. Let's be straight up, okay?
Yeah, he does not play a doctor.
I'm not. But like, for example, I have pretty severe arthritis. I have a heart condition I have to retain for. I've taken the time to do research on the native stuff as if tomorrow morning you can't get medicines. And I have to go off of my stuff that I take out of every day. Is it as good? Absolutely not. But it's what there is. So what would be my alternative? That's what I've researched. See? And that's my own personal thing. I'm not saying medicine's bad. Medicine is fantastic. It does, you know, makes life so much more livable for so many people. But if a situation arose where there ain't going to be no more medicine showing up, economic collapse, social collapse, whatever you want to
supply chain issues.
Supply chain issues. A lot of this stuff is made in China. Medicine's, a vast majority of medicine is made in China, and for some reason we went to war with China, or they went to war with somebody, or whatever, and suddenly you can't get heart medication. it's going to take time for them to gear up in the U.S. to make it, even if they know how to make it. And we've got the ability to make it and get it to you. So do your research and find out what can buy you some time.
That's the greatest part of all of this, whether it's first aid or medicinal, time. When I was an EMT, we had this thing we called the golden hour. In an emergency situation, a true emergency situation, you have, by rule of thumb, 1 hour that is your absolute gold standard, because everything goes downhill quickly after that hour is up. Is that variable? Yes. But generally after that first hour, things kind of go downhill in a hurry.
That adrenaline rush that happens when you get hurt, that's holding you up, crashes.
Right.
And that's when the person starts going into shock. That's when they start shutting down. And they can go into shock and die from a relatively minor wound. Just because of it. Shock is a huge killer. 22 years ago, I lost a young friend of mine that her and some friends had gone to the beach and were coming back, and in those days, it's illegal, it was never a good idea, but people would ride in the back of pickup trucks. And an auto accident happened and the truck rolled, and my friend, the truck had rolled over on top of her and she was in this sandy ditch. She was not physically injured badly, just bumps and bruises, but she's underneath the upside down pickup truck and her legs are kind of sticking out in the sand and the truck's got her pinched. They opened up the tailgate and could talk to her. She, it's just her legs from like the calves down are pinned. That's it. And it was about an hour and some odd minutes before law enforcement got there, responders, and she died of shock.
Yeah, I had a cousin back in '82, I think it was, that was killed in a car wreck, and everybody there knew that she was dead from the time help arrived, because the car was laying on top of her and it had all of the blood pushed up into her chest and her brain. And one of the unfortunate sides of car wrecks, those kind of wrecks, is that when you pull the car off, you lose that pressure. There's so much trauma south of where the car is lying that your pressure automatically bottoms out and you have a collapse of the system. And that's what happened to my cousin. They had brought in her parents and they had all said goodbye. And when they rolled the car off, within about 35 or 40 seconds, she was gone.
It's because of the traumatic nature of it. My friend was pinned. In fact, when they got the truck off over the corner, said she wasn't even hardly bruised. But being there, being so afraid and everything, and that magic hour had gone by, that out of sheer shock, she had died. There was no real physical to her. It was just that, and that's what got her. So people react differently. It's just one of those hard things. So what you need to know in first aid is this. Here's your homework. Learn basic first aid of how to apply a bandage, how to open up an airway and get them breathing again.
That's as simple as just lifting the jaw, putting your thumbs behind the hinge of the jaw,
and lifting it
and
up.
just lifting it up. That can clear enough air for them to breathe on their own.
If their tongue is slid back, are they conscious or not conscious? You need to look and learn. And most of you will have a Red Cross near you, and they quite often offer a free class on basic first aid. I recommend you take classes on CPR. I recommend you take classes on how to perform the Heimlich maneuver, how to deal with a drowning victim. Because those are things, if the person ain't breathing, you're on a real short timer. We can work with broke bones and stuff like that, but if they ain't breathing, we got a problem right now.
You
can't
have
wait.
4 minutes and the clock's ticking.
Yeah, 4 minutes, and then they start losing stuff. So you've got to be quick. If their windpipe is blocked, you got to get that going one way or another. If they're breathing, then next concentration is blood. Are they bleeding? Okay, stop the blood flow, keep them calm, etc. Elevate, etc. And then treat for shock. These are big, vital areas, and it doesn't have to be major. One of my best friends in high school, if he saw blood, he went out. I mean, like that. And he accidentally stuck himself in the thigh with a big knife. And it wasn't a bad hit. I mean, the wound was about the size of a dime and maybe a 1/4 inch deep. But the second he saw blood, he was gone. Timber, smash, he was out. You know, and so everybody acts and reacts differently. And you have to be aware of that and how you're going to respond to it. And only by going through these trainings you're going to do it. Now, I know this is beyond what you asked me, which was for home remedies. But I'm not going to tell you how to use this, because you can kill somebody with that if you don't have the training. See, it'd be like, I want to know how to do major surgery, but I don't want to have to know all that anatomy stuff. Yeah. They go hand in hand. I can't give you what I would do if I was sitting there, because you don't have my training or experience, or Bear's training and experience. See? So
yeah, I like I said at the beginning, I have been a Red Cross lifeguard and an Alabama licensed emergency medical technician, and I spent about 4 years on my local rescue squad, so I've pretty much seen it, done it, and bought the t-shirt.
Yeah. And I've had 21 people die in my arms because I was the first one at the car wreck.
Yeah.
I pulled them out. I've been there when they burned. I've been there when they were pinned. I've seen it. You know, and that's just the way it is. People get hurt.
It's life.
That's life.
It's life. People will get hurt. The thing about it is, like we have stressed, get your training, do your research for the home remedies. There is a channel called the Honeystead, and this is a mother and a daughter who are licensed herbologists. And I believe they're out of Virginia, but they're still licensed, and you know, they have just a plethora of information available. Just research it.
Mm-hmm. Find out about it. Mechanical injury is normally the sudden injury.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will come across more mechanical injuries than you will systemic injuries.
That's going to pick up that box of tools on the homestead and shoving a splinter completely up underneath your finger.
Or picking up a tire.
Or picking up a tire like I did, changing the tire and throwing your back out. You know, that happened recently. You're going to have mechanical injuries, so learn how to treat mechanical injuries. The average person, on average, will heal from just about anything given enough time. There are certain things they cannot heal from. It's too quick going. As far as medicines and stuff, where nausea, sicknesses, illnesses, things like that, those usually, not every time guys, usually come on slower over a period of days. So you realize, I'm getting sick, I'm getting the cold, I'm getting this, I'm having a headache all the time, or whatever. Indications of pain that don't go away. Can be something else. Seek medical treatment. My father, let me just give you a case in point, was a bull. I mean, He was like, you know, I'm like him, where if it was something that got banged or broken up, I took care of it. Unless it's a compound fracture or a severe broke, I'm gonna go get that. But cuts, bumps, bruises, broke fingers, broke toes, knocked out a tooth, I'll deal with it because of the training I've got for myself. But my father severely injured the bicep in his right arm. And he went and they told him that he had torn up some stuff and they wanted to do surgery, and he refused to do it. Well, over the next 10 or 12 years, he kept working with it, and after about, say, 8 or 9 years, there would be these times when he would be holding something and his arm would suddenly go numb and just drop whatever he's holding in the hand. And he couldn't even, it was like from here down, he couldn't move it. Well, it would come back over 20, 30, 45 minutes. Yeah. And he attributed it to that damage to the arm. It wasn't. He had a tumor in his brain that controlled that area. But this old injury was masking this problem. But he just lumped that symptom of the arm just going numb to being that old injury.
Most people would.
Most people would.
Never go on one symptom. You're going to present with a series of symptoms and evaluate those symptoms. Okay?
And this thing in his head, this tumor, was incredibly slow growing, was easily treatable. But since he ignored it, and he gave it 12 years to grow, that by the time he realized that this was something else, and he had a seizure, and they brought him in and found out he was, you know, stage 4. There was nothing they could do then. When you're going to be out and this stuff, it's not only knowing of how to use nature and how to use basic mechanical and take care of yourself. It's also recognizing when this needs to be looked at by somebody with alphabet after their name. Go see a doc. And if something like that is recurring, if there's a pain somewhere that doesn't seem to be a mechanical injury but keeps coming back, that may require medical treatment, and you need to go have a professional look and find that out. That's the huge advantage today that you have over the people of 150 years ago, where they may have had medicines comparable in their own world to what we got, but they didn't have the ability to look inside the body and see these problems. We do now. So you need to go find medical attention if you've got a problem that doesn't seem to fit any of the simple answers. Go have somebody check you out.
Exactly.
Anything else, sir?
Yeah, I've got one more resource.
Okay.
This has come up an awful lot in past videos, but this is my copy of the original printing of Foxfire. This series of books, I think there's 13 or 14 of the series. Yeah. If you can find them, grab them with both arms. It's signs and sayings and wisdom and construction techniques. Particularly in this one, you learn how to make soap. You can learn how to dress a hog, build a log cabin. But back here in the back, there's an entire chapter of home remedies. Mm-hmm. There are for arthritis. The mountain people of southern Appalachia in the late 60s and early 70s recommended mixtures of honey, vinegar, and moonshine. Mm-hmm. Make a tea. Make a tea from either the seeds or the leaves of alfalfa. Drink powdered rhubarb dissolved in white whiskey, which is moonshine. Mm-hmm. And also, oddly enough, the last one says a magnet draws it out of the body. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but hold your arm up. He's wearing a copper band, and I know copper will have an effect to alleviate some of that pain.
I wear that because when I was 9 years old, that wrist got shattered. My dad was a truck driver, and we were loading 600-pound bales of cloth with a hand truck. from one trailer into another, just back the trailers together and put a gangplank between them. And I went to help push it over. I was 9 years old, and it slipped and fell back, and it pinched my wrist against one of the ribs of the 18-wheeler, and it shattered my wrist. And we didn't go to the doctor. It was just stiff and sore and black. And my grandmother took 2 wooden spoons and put the round eating part up here and one in the palm of my hand and ran masking tape around. That was the splint. I wore that for 6 months.
Here's some more things. For bleeding, place a spider web across the wound. What that does is it provides a framework for the platelets to grab a hold of and form a scab. Apply a poultice of spirit of turpentine and brown sugar, which is kind of what he was talking about earlier.
Pine
just
sap,
pine
yeah.
sap.
Turpentine.
Apply lamp black. You can use a mixture of soot from the chimney and lard. Let's see. Small
Which
wet
is
cigarette paper. Place
Heavy
over-
carbon. Soot is heavy carbon.
Right.
And would be like antibacterial because it can't live with the carbon.
Well, the last thing listed here under bleeding is pine resin. When you're dealing with insect stings, it's a proven thing because I've had to do it. I don't smoke, but I know a lot of people who do. Grab you a cigarette, pop the tube of tobacco open, put it in your hand, put a little water, make a poultice, put it on the sting. It will take the bite out of it.
The nicotine in it's actually deadening the nerves.
Yeah, and it
What's
will also
happening.
reduce the swelling. You can also take just plain old meat tenderizer, do exactly the same thing. Put it in your hand, mix just enough water to make a poultice, apply it to the wound. And I know this one for a fact because when I was about 10 years old maybe, I stepped on a bee nest in our backyard and I got stung 31 times. And I made it to the back door and passed out. Well, my mom grabbed me under one arm, my dad grabbed me under the other, and they took me to the bathroom. And when I came to, I was standing at the sink, stripped absolutely as naked as the day I was born. And Mama was applying tenderizer, Daddy was holding me up, and Mama was applying this tenderizer poultice to all of the bites, and it worked. It drew the toxins out, and you remember Dr. Mitchell?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Dr. Mitchell was our next door neighbor, and he gave Mama the recipe.
Yep.
So I know that one works.
I had 11 red hornets that my grandmother sent me out to the barn to get. There was a desk out there, and up under the desk, there was all kinds of stuff piled around it. But
Yeah.
under the desk was a coffee can full of nails.
Yeah.
And when I bent down and reached up under that desk, there was a red wasp nest right there, and they turned around and they all hit me in the forehead at one time, 11 of them.
For the record, red wasps do not play well with others.
And they don't lose their stingers, so they can hit you multiple times. But it felt, there was no sensation of stuff crawling on you and hit it. It felt to me as if someone hit me in the forehead with like a hammer.
Yeah. I got tied up with one. I was checking on some puppies for my brother. We'd been grown by this time, and he was raising hunting dogs. And one of his prime hunters had a litter of puppies, and I was checking on them. And when I opened up the door to check on the puppies and the mother, the wasp came flying out, and he hit me in the forehead, on my cheek, on my chest, on my leg, and on the top of my foot. As he fell down my body, he was just going every time he could get stinger to skin. And I used one of these little methods and doctored myself up when I got home. Unfortunately, the wasp did not make it. When he hit the ground, he just sort of ceased to exist, if you know what I mean.
when my sister, she ran afoul of yellow jackets.
Yeah.
She went walk around on the back side of her house, and there was a air conditioner back there, and she wanted to make sure, go around there with the weed eater. Well, the weed eater's running, so she didn't hear him. And that nest boiled out and got her. And so she called me up, and she was laying in the floor of her house, and I had to go over and like you said, I took whatever that meat tenderizer, get it to
Yeah, McCormick's.
and I made poultices, and we put them all over those bites she had, and monitored her fever.
Yeah, don't be modest.
That goes out the window when somebody's
Modesty is not an option. You know, if you have to strip somebody down to provide first aid, don't be modest.
Clothing can be repaired. I have ripped pants
Yes.
because we thought we had a broke leg, and I said, okay, and I hooked at the bottom and run to the top. Let's open it up and let's see. Because I can't see through a pair of blue jeans, but I can see the skin color and see it's turning black right there. Okay, we're gonna break.
Yeah, generally people will understand. I have a first aid kit. It's just a basic boo-boo kit, but it has a tourniquet and it has a pair of medical scissors.
Shears.
Yeah, medical shears, so that I can pop a hole in a pants leg and run a seam all the way down the pants leg and expose the wound. You know, we talked about your medical kits at the beginning of the video, and you can put something together, study them. You can go to a big box and go to the first aid or pharmacy area, and they're gonna have bandages. They're gonna have gauze, they're gonna have tape, they're gonna have antibiotic ointment. They're going to have some. I've even bought a little medical box that had anti-stain wipes. It has antiseptic alcohol wipes. It had. They don't use iodine anymore, but and they don't use beta. They use something else. I can't remember what it is, but it had that ointment.
Speaking of that, you take black walnut hulls and you put it in vodka. Just find you a black walnut tree, take the outer hull, the husk, off of the nut. You want it a little bit greenish, not pure green, but a little bit green. And put it into a big old mayonnaise jar or whatever, pack as much in there as you can get. Fill it to the top with vodka, something like that, screw the lid on, and give it about 8 months, and what you have is iodine, because it will leach it out of that black walnut, and that's where they had iodine from.
Yeah,
Now,
iodine's one of those tricky things. Some people it does not agree with. And
again, you got to test what you're making, see how you do. But when we were growing up, it was methylate, iodine, something like
Oh, yeah.
burn.
Mercuric.
Woo! Does it burn? But it would kill all the germs.
yeah, it would either kill it or cure it.
Yeah, and peroxide, same idea. If you had a problem, you know, we'll talk about whiskey. Medicinal whiskey was used extensively because whiskey and peppermint for sore throats, raw throats, stuff like that. Because the alcohol would help A, numb it, B, be a little painkiller.
I have used for years. I have used the recipe of 1 tablespoon of honey and a half a tablespoon of whiskey, of bourbon, and you stir it up in a cup. Like I said, I don't drink, so mine is legitimately medicinal, and he can vouch.
Yeah.
But you take it in a very small glass, like 1 step up from a shot glass, and put that honey in there, and put the whiskey in on top of it, and stir it up till it's sort of a loose liquid, till it dilates the honey, and then have whoever has a sore throat and coughing and stuff, have them shoot it. Okay, just chug it right
Coats
down.
the throat.
Yes, the honey provides an antibacterial. It makes it palatable, and the whiskey will actually numb the area. It acts as a transport agent for the honey, and it gets dispersed over a wider area. It will cure the cough. I have seen that for years.
Especially when what it is there's some sort of little irritation down there.
Yes.
and your coughing is actually making it worse. Well, this coating it gives the body a chance to heal.
Right.
And one other thing we'll wind up with, for those of you that's got little ones, and you've got some sort of medicine you got to give them and they just can't stand it, or you've got to take some sort of medicine
That you just can't stand.
God, I can't stand it. The best thing I have ever found for that is pineapple juice. Pineapple juice has a way of masking whatever comes after it. So I had this medicine when I was young that I had a lot of medical issues and they were making me take, and it was absolutely, I still have nightmares remembering that crap. God. They used to come in a little bitty bottle and had a teeny tiny little teddy bear. They put them, remember they give it, and they snap off teddy bear and give the kid the teddy bear for a toy. Now it's a choking hazard today, but oh, I remember them bottles. Oh my God. And, but we found that if you will take a big mouthful of pineapple juice and sit there and hold it just a minute, swish it around your mouth, swallow, shoot the medicine, and then immediately take another big gulp of pineapple juice, it nullifies the taste like you never did it.
I think what you're talking about, because I took a gallon of it myself, was they had, it was codeine and cherry flavored juice.
God.
And there are people our ages that still have post-traumatic stress disorder from taking that crap.
It was just horrible.
Yes, and it wasn't full strength opiate. Don't have a meltdown. Don't put a lot of.
This was being given to us by doctors in the office. I don't mean something they sent you home.
Yes, it came in a little bottle about that tall, and you never used more than about a teaspoon.
Yeah.
But it was an opiate.
And God, it was horrible.
Yes, and put it in there with some I've heard that they put it in with pineapple juice.
And one of the reasons they did that is they didn't want us to like it.
Yeah, that way you're not going to take a whole bunch of it.
And you wouldn't get addicted to it. And it was not a medicine they would send home. I remember that you had to go to the office to get it. And I remember that little teeny, about half-inch tall little teddy bear. That was part of the lid. It snapped off the lid, and that was your,
that was
prize.
That was the safety seal.
Yeah, they would snap that off, and then they would open it up, and you had to chug it, and you got that was your little prize for taking the medicine, whatever. Back in them stupid days. I mean, to this.
Well, they weren't stupid. We survived.
Yeah, but to this day, I don't know, the name of it. But I just remember having people like that I can mention. Remember that cherry flavor, and everybody goes, "Oh dear God, no."
Yeah.
50 years later, we still remember that, how horrible that was. And like I said, first aid and stuff, that was one of the reasons it was Suck It Up Buttercup. Medical treatment was not pleasant. You got a bad cut. Granny would grab the mercurochrome and methylate, and that was like pouring gas in a fire. Oh my God, it hurt. So for you got where you could come in, your arm could be broke into string, you hurt, no, I'm fine. Because you knew that the treatment was going to be horrible. Yeah, this hurts, but no, I don't want any medicine. I'm okay.
Thank you, Granny. I'll help.
I'll be all right. Yeah.
I'll walk it off.
I'll walk it off, and I did. I had a pretty bad cut on the bottom of my foot one time, and I hid that thing for 4 days. Scared to death that Granny would want to pour methylate in it. And what it was a fish hook that was sticking up in on a pier. A big catfish hook.
That makes me cringe just to think
And
about
and what had happened was I had taken my boot off because it had water in it. And I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. And took it off because we'd been wading and went to pour it out. And when I put my foot down, it did like that, and that hook just laid the bottom of my foot open like a razor blade, about 4 inches long. Bled, and so I finally got to quit bleeding, put my boot on, and like 4 days later, 4 or 5 days later, really.
When Grandma's washing bloody socks.
She found the sock. You're
That
young enough,
did it?
you're old enough to know this is not going to be good, and you're young enough not to hire a lookout. I should have thrown that sock away, buried it in the backyard, but no. She comes walking in there and she, you know, I'm sitting there, I got my boots on, and she like, let me see your foot. What foot? Let me see your foot. And I didn't want her to see it. She knew then. So a wrestling match ensued, and she pulled that boot off and saw, now it's starting to fester up, now it's getting infected. So that's when she sits there and picks at it, it goes back to bleeding, and then she put methylate on it, which was, oh my God, pain.
Yeah.
You know.
Just kill me now.
Just kill me now. And then she bandaged it up and had to see it twice a day, check the bandage, make sure it wasn't getting infected.
My grandmothers had that prerogative. They can do that.
Oh, God.
It's in their job description.
Yeah. But, you know, I see people today and they get the least little ooh and they're ready to go to the ER.
Oh, yeah. You'd think they've had an arm snatched off.
You're kidding me, right?
You know, I'm a granddaddy 3 times over, and my grandkids know. My kids know. My oldest one's 31, and my youngest one's 15, but they know Daddy's going to revert back to the old medic if he has to.
Yeah, we'll fix it.
We can either do this the nice way or the not nice way. You pick.
Yeah. We can take care of it. I guarantee you won't like it, but we will. Well, guys, I appreciate y'all watching. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us. Sorry we can't go too terrible in depth.
We're not going to go too terrible in depth.
I can't go too terrible in depth because I don't know what you know. And just a touch of knowledge is a dangerous thing whenever you don't know the rest of it. I can't tell you how to use a lot of these plants and things for home remedies because you don't have our experience.
Oh, I do have one more thing.
What?
The most ridiculous home remedy that I ever heard, it was when I was an EMT. We had taken a patient to the ER, and this woman, another patient, was in the ER drunk as a skunk. I mean, it was bad. And we somehow or other, I don't remember how, but chicken pox came into the discussion. And she said, oh, if you'll just wrap them in a blanket in the dark of the moon and put them under the door of the chicken house and shoo the chickens out over them, the pox will dry up in about 10 to 12 days. Okay, do we see what the ridiculous point of that comment is?
Yeah, because the pox is going to dry up in 10, 12 days if you do nothing.
The pox, you just let it sit there, the pox is going to dry up in about 12 days.
10, 12 days anyway, so.
But I had to throw that in just as a point of reference.
I have seen the fella that worked with a cousin of mine that my cousin called me up and said, would you come over here and look at this guy? And his family don't have a lot of money, okay? They're just poor people. They're working with pup water.
Old Doc Thomas.
And want me to look at him, and what had happened was that he had gone over a fence down in a swamp where it had barbed wire, and when he went to go over the fence, his foot slipped and a hunk of barbed wire had hung him just above his belly button and ripped him all the way up here, and it'd been pretty deep, you know, and he should have went to the doctor and had stitches, but his wife took sewing thread and sewed him up. And then he had pages from a Bible stuck to him where they would dip them in something to make them stick to it. And he thought that the pages of the Bible would heal him. Now the Bible is a good book. It don't make a good bandage.
No.
And she'd used the wrong kind of thread and she hadn't sterilized the thread, and so it was getting infected.
Yeah.
And it needed air. And it needs to be cleaned up. So we took care of that, but...
Yeah, that's one reason that doctors don't bandage stitches.
Let it air.
They'll let it air. Well, I mean, you know, Band-Aids or something that it can get air through. But they don't seal it for that exact reason.
One of the things that came up in history, in the early 1800s, there was a medical doctor that noticed during the Indian Wars that a soldier that was treated by a official physician had less of a survival rate than the Native Americans were treating their own. And so he found a friendly tribe that he could investigate. What was happening was you got a bullet wound into a meaty section where a bone wasn't hit, they'd dig the bullet out and then they just sew it closed. Well, that trapped all the germs. They didn't understand the concept of germs in there. And so these guys were dying of infections. The native would take it and would get the bullet out, and then they would take basically a tube, copper or whatever, and they would make a yarrow soup, which is yarrow's anti-material, and would suck it up like you'd suck gas up, and then they'd shove it in the hole and blow it. So it would aerate out the wound, and then they pried the wound open bigger and put a plug in. And twice a day they would pull the plug out and they would rinse the wound out. So they're letting it heal from the inside out and kept the infection to a minimum, because the stuff they were using for the washes and stuff like that was boiled water, so it's been sterilized. They had yarrow root in it, which had anti-properties, etc. And so by flushing it out, they were allowing the body to heal from the inside out, where the whites were just sealing it up.
This would be a good place to put honey in. Honey would be
great. A wash with sterilized water and honey would do good.
That would be a good place to apply honey medicinally. I had it was right there. It was about to come out.
Do this and put your brain back in gear.
Yeah, really. Another, it's going to sound completely disgusting, but for an open wound like he's describing, one of the best remedies or treatments is actually something that's been brought back in recent years by the medical community called medicinal maggots.
Yeah. Maggots only eat dead flesh.
They only eat the bad stuff. They don't eat the good stuff. And it will heal from the inside out. Now that's completely disgusting, and I do not say that you go pack your cuts and stuff with maggots. Don't do that. But it's, you know, it's something to think about.
There, like I said, the book, Where There Is No Doctor, you know, talks about stuff. Leeches were used for hundreds of years, and
they're coming back.
They're still used where you've had a finger amputated, and they reconnected it. Well, they'll put the leeches up here because they're drawing blood into the wound. Yeah, they reconnected everything, but they got to get the blood into the tissues, and so this is kind of like sucking more blood into the straw and getting more blood flow into that damaged area. So they were raising specifically from the ground up, like he's talking about maggots. They're raising them. Not wild, these are raised in a lab.
These are lab raised.
So there was a kernel from this barbaric, we think, medieval practice that they were seeing some results. That's the reason they adopted it.
They didn't know what the result was, but it was a positive, so why not?
And today we can see where leeches that are raised so they ain't got no diseases or nothing can be used to increase blood flow.
Yes.
That the saliva that the leech has that keeps blood from clotting has been turned into a medical thing for treating people with blood clots.
Yeah, that's the thing about putting the leech on the finger, is the saliva in the leech's mouth prevents the blood clot.
And that keeps them from having the problem. And so there's a lot of things out there that are just now coming to pass again. Who knows 100 years from now what they'll be coming up with next. You know, innovation comes from the fact that they notice that this is true in everything but here. I've heard it said, don't quote me, but I've heard it said that sharks, they never found a shark with cancer. So what is it about a shark that makes them immune to cancer? There'll be some sort of property there. Could that apply to us? We don't know. But the bottom line is all medicines came from some native or natural or whatever, and then it was taken into a lab, refined into the active part, and then put back into our population.
Exactly.
Well, guys, thank you for watching. For the second time, let's call it quits. And I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be doing more. On the next one, which will be number 11, we're going to be talking about security on homesteads and stuff like that, how to do security, how to protect yourself, that type deal. When you're in an out area where you have to be your own responder, fire security, stuff like that. Just knowledge of being out in the woods, of how you protect yourself from wildfire, from intruders, from etc. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Okay, till next time, guys, I'm Blackie and Bear. Safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.